Hashem commands Moshe Rabbeinu Vasul Mikdash Shachanti B'Socham. Gather together all of the donations from the Klal Yisrael, make a mikdash, and in that mikdash I will dwell. This was to be the single greatest creation that any human being can do. It was beautiful in the sense of majestic as far as the workmanship, but this was to be the Mishkan. This was to be the greatest spiritual accomplishment of mankind. And each of the kelim in the Mishkan, as well as the Mishkan itself, was extraordinarily complex. And Hashem gave very clear instructions to Moshe Rabbeinu. Kechol asher ne'mara oscha. I'm going to show you exactly what to do as tavnis of Mishkan, the formation, the actual building of the Mishkan, ves tavnis kol kelav, as well as each of the vessels. I'm going to show you the structure. I'm going to show you how to create it. V'chein tasu, and that's how you shall do it. And in fact, that's what Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded. Moshe Rabbeinu appointed Betzalel, appointed other Chachmei Lev, and the Mishkan was built. There's only one of the kelim that was built in a very unusual way. The pasuk says, "Vasisa menorah zahav tahar." Make a pure menorah of gold, miksha, it has to be banged out. Te'asah menorah, the menorah shall be built. And it almost sounds contradictory, because Moshe Rabbeinu was commanded, you should make the menorah, and then the pasuk says, Te'aseh menorah, the menorah shall be made. And Rashi explains it's actually what happened. Hashem told Moshe, this is how you should make the menorah. And Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't understand it. He couldn't fathom whether it be the physical structure, the spiritual component of Kavanah, but whatever the point is, Moshe Rabbeinu was stumped, he couldn't figure it out. So finally Hashem said, fine, I'm going to show you. Look in the mountain, and Hashem made a menorah out of ash, out of fire, exactly the form, exactly how the menorah was to build, and that was to be the format that Moshe Rabbeinu was to follow. Still Moshe Rabbeinu was stumped. Still Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't fathom how to do it. He couldn't understand it. And finally Hashem says, fine, take the kikar zav, take that gold, the clump of gold, that measure of gold, throw it into the fire, and on its own it will come out. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. He took the clump of gold, the kikar of zahav, threw it into the fire, and the menorah came out from it. And that's why the pasuk has two expressions. Vasisa menorah, you shall make the menorah. Te'asa menorah, the menorah shall be made, because it wasn't actually made by man, it was made by the fire. And this Rashi is very, very perplexing. Because you see, one of the hallmarks of a good teacher is understanding the level of a student. I was a high school Rebbe for many years, and it took me a long time to get an understanding of what level each shiur was on and what to challenge them with, and yet on the other hand it had to be within their grasp. So here's the point. The menorah clearly was not within human grasp. First Hashem said to Moshe, make it this way. Moshe couldn't understand it. And then Hashem says, okay, I'm going to show you in a fire on the har. And Hashem shows him the image. And still Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't understand it until Hashem says, okay, it's obvious you can't understand it. Take the clump of gold, throw it into the fire. Hashem understands what Moshe Rabbeinu can comprehend and can't. So why does Hashem bother by saying, first explaining it and then showing him the image? It's very clear that Moshe Rabbeinu had to know the image, had to know what he's making. Why is that necessary? He's anyway going to just throw the clump of gold into the fire. Why does Hashem have to explain it to him? Why does Moshe have to have that image? It's going to be created miraculously anyway. Why does Hashem have to show him exactly what he's going to do? And to answer this Rashi, I believe we need a better understanding as to one of the most delicate balances that we human beings are charged with. And that balance is the balance between bitachon and hishtadlus. Bitachon and hishtadlus in very simple terms means we know that everything under the sun, everything in creation has been created, maintained, and guided by Hashem. No happenstance, no mikra. As the Rambam says in one of the first of the Animamins, Animamim Emuna Shalima, Shabori Yisparach, who Bore Umanig. Hashem is the creator and one who runs the world. V'hu Lavado, and he alone. Asa, Ose, V'yasa, L'cholamasim, he alone did, does, and will do all activities under the sun. Everything that happens, Hashem is intimately involved in. Everything that occurs, Hashem guides. And that's clearly Hashem's part. Yet, there's man's part. We're supposed to do our hishtadlus. We're supposed to do our effort. And understanding that balance and understanding Hashem's role, our role, what Hashem's supposed to do, what we're supposed to do, is one of the trickiest and most delicate balances that we're charged with understanding. And I'd like to begin to see if we could better understand it. And the first thing we really have to do is tease apart the two roles, to define clearly what is Hashem's role, and then define clearly what is our role. So let's begin with Hashem's role. The Chovos Avovos in Sha'ar Bitachon explains to us that one of the underpinnings of our entire bitachon system is knowing she'ein biyad echad min habruim, no single creation can help me nor can harm me. No one under the sun can cause me harm. Nothing under the sun can help me. Ki im b'reshus habore, unless it's with Hashem's permission. And that is the basic underpinnings of our bitachon system. How long I'm going to live, how much money I'll make, whom I'll marry, even which piece of property I will own has been decreed, has been set. And no human being can change that. You can scheme, you can dream, you cannot harm me. You could have all the worst intentions in the world, you could wish to harm me, you can't do it. And if you'd like to understand what active bitachon means, imagine that there's a lucite bubble. Imagine a very strong, powerful lucite bubble protects me. As I walk down the street, you could try to throw rocks, you could try to shoot, you can't penetrate. There's no lucite bubble, but there is a creator. Hashem is there with me 24/7, 365, guarding me, protecting me. No one can penetrate that, no one can harm me, nothing can befall me. And as no one can hurt me, so too no one can help me. You could be the richest fellow in the world. If I'm not supposed to have that money, it'll go in this pocket, go out that pocket. My uncle could be the head of Sloan Kettering. If my time is up, it says Chum L'Shalom. Understanding that no human being can harm me, as well as no human being can help me, is the underpinnings of our entire bitachon system. Hashem and Hashem alone decrees every outcome. But if you'd like to know how far this goes, I'll share with you an interesting observation. When I was a child in grade school, I had a teacher who taught us how to take a compliment. Very important life lesson. I remember she told us, don't squirm, don't look away, look the person right in the eye and say, thank you very much. Now that's a wonderful life lesson, how to take a compliment. But I didn't have any teacher teach me how to take an insult. But the Chovos Avovos does. He says, when someone gratuitously rips into you, when someone insults you, when someone ranks you out, what you should do immediately is turn your eyes heavenwardly. Look to Hashem and say the words, thank you for revealing a few of my many flaws, because you're supposed to understand that no human being can harm me. If that busha wasn't coming to me, you couldn't have done it. And if I was supposed to be embarrassed, if you weren't there, I would have dropped a plate of hot soup, I would have tripped. That amount of pain, that amount of embarrassment was coming to me. And if you'd like to understand it in more clear terms, imagine that I'm speaking in a large audience. And I have a microphone. I'm speaking into the microphone, and there are loudspeakers, and from the loudspeakers comes my voice. And imagine in the middle, I look at someone and says, you're a bleep, bleep, I start calling them names, and I start insulting them, and a person turns red, turns white, stands up in anger, walks over to the loudspeaker, punches the loudspeaker, right in the subwoofer. Now, had that person gotten up and punched me, we could discuss whether that was clever or not. But punching the loudspeaker is not a very intelligent thing to say. Why? Because there's a person speaking into the mic. And then that sound comes out of the loudspeaker. But the loudspeaker is nothing but something transmitting a voice of someone speaking. When a human being insults me, hurts me, I'm supposed to understand that that was directed by Hashem. I didn't ask you, sir, to be the nunnik to deliver the message. Nevertheless, you are nothing but a shliach. No human being can harm me. And it cuts across the gamut of life. In every activity, in every situation, I'm supposed to know and understand Hashem directs the world. No human being can harm me. No human being can help me. Everything is decreed. Everything is Meis Hashem. But really, it cuts even further than that. Because in earlier Shmuz in the Parsha, we discussed the Ramban describes Teva. When you put a seed in the ground, if you really understand life, you understand that that's Hashem. And Hashem created and maintains every particle of physicality, and everything that occurs only occurs because Hashem constantly is mishaveh, constantly puts energy into it, constantly keeps it. When you study the laws of physics, you're studying the system via which Hashem runs the world. But that's Hashem, that's God. If Hashem wasn't constantly infusing energy into everything, that would cease to exist. And when you see nature, you see Hashem hidden behind the scenes through a very orderly, systematic method, but that's your creator. And when you understand that, you understand everything is Hashem, from the inanimate to the animate, and certainly to Bnei Adam, to people. No human being can harm me, no human being can help me. I walk around with that lucite bubble protected by Hashem, exactly that which is supposed to be is supposed to be. And that's Hashem's role, basically everything. So where does that leave us? Am I supposed to just sit back and let the mun come in? Am I supposed to just allow Hashem to run the world? What's man's role in the equation? So to understand this part, let's focus on a little different area of Chumash. There's Rabbi Shafier who describes in Parshas Noach something rather perplexing. We are told the exact dimensions of the Teva. Hashem commands Noach, build this ark. It should be 300 amas long, 50 amas wide, 30 amas tall. Exactly how to build it. Ask Rabbi Shafier, why do we, more than 3,000 years later, need to know the size of the ark? It's really irrelevant. What do we need to know that for? And explains Rabbi Shafier, the Torah is teaching us a great principle. Do the math. Let's assume an amma is 2 feet. So if the teva was 300 amas long, it means it was 600 feet long, 100 feet wide, 60 feet tall. If you think about all the animals in creation, the hippos, the baboons, the elephants, the giraffes, they couldn't possibly have fit in such a small boat. The Bronx Zoo only has about 2,000 animals, and yet it's on 265 acres. And even when they expand to full capacity, 4,000 animals, it's a huge, huge section of land. If you had 50 tevas, says Rabbi Shafier, they couldn't possibly house all the animals in creation at the time. So that exactly is what the Torah is teaching us. Hashem said to Noach, you have to do your hishtadlus. To build a teva large enough to house all the animals in creation is well, well beyond what you can do. But you can't not do anything. You have to do as much as you can, and only when you reach the absolute maximum of what you can do, then you can rely on teva. And explains Rabbi Shafier that's a operating principle in the entire Torah. You have to go b'derech hateva. You have to go in the ways of nature, and only once you've exhausted the ways of nature, then you could rely on the nes. And explains Rabbi Shafier that's a concept you'll see over and over throughout Tanakh. Throughout Tanakh, you'll see the avos, throughout Chumash, throughout the Nevi'im, all went b'derech hateva. As for instance, Yeshua. Yeshua was bringing the Jewish nation into Eretz Yisrael. Now, Eretz Yisrael was occupied by giants living in fortified cities. And every single war was won miraculously. Not a single Jewish soldier died except in one battle. And then the big question was, one soldier died. What sin? Who sinned? Yet, Yeshua, before each battle, told the Jewish people, put on your armor, sharpen your swords, and get ready for the battle. Says Rabbi Shafier, why? There was no way, according to the ways of the world, they could have won these battles. They were against fortified cities, giants occupying them. They knew it was a nes. Explains Rabbi Shafier, that's exactly the point. You have to go b'derech hateva. You have to go in the ways of nature, and only once you've exhausted the ways of nature, then you can rely on the miracle. But you'll see this over and over. And if you'd like to see one of the most telling examples, let's pay careful attention to a pasuk in Chumash. Hashem says to Shmuel Hanavi, Vani ma'asti mimloch Yisrael. I no longer want Shaul to be the king. I find his leadership abhorrent. I want someone else. And Hashem commands Shmuel, go to Yishai. One of his sons is to be the future king of Israel. Go there. Says Shmuel back to Hashem, Eich elech, how can I go? V'shama Shaul v'argeni. Shaul will hear that I'm going to appoint another king in his stead, and he'll kill me. Says Hashem back to Shmuel, Eglex bacha tikach be'edecha. Take this egel, take this little calf. Tell Shaul that you're bringing a carbon. He'll fall for the ruse, and then you'll appoint one of Yishai's sons to be the future king. Says the Chovos HaLevavos, wait a minute. This is Hashem, the creator of heavens and earth, talking to a Novi Hashem, to a prophet. And he gives him a command. Shmuel says, Hashem, I can't go. The powerful King Shaul is going to kill me. Hashem should have blasted him. Who gives life? Who gives death? Who runs the world? Are you afraid of immortal flesh and blood? Yet that's not what Hashem said. Hashem said back, okay, here's the plan. Take this little egel, take this little calf. You'll tell Shaul you're going to bring a carbon, and he'll fall for the trick. Explains the Chovos HaLevavos, what Shmuel did was right. Why? Because it was imminent danger. It was makam sakana. Even a Novi Hashem, but given a directive from Hashem himself, is not allowed to put himself in danger, because we're obligated to go b'derech hateva. What Shmuel did was correct. That's why Hashem said, fine, tell him you're bringing a carbon, and explains, this is a principle we see over and over. A person's obligated to go b'derech hateva, in the ways of nature, and only once he's exhausted it is he allowed to rely on the miracle. And now we come to that very, very difficult balance. How do we understand this? If I'm obligated to go in the derech hateva, and yet I have to know Hashem runs the world, how do we get that balance? So I'll give you a mashal that I think well defines it. Imagine you go to a play, and at the end of the play, the two male actors get into a fight. One swings, one punches, the kicks, and then the curtain comes down, play's over. Okay. 10 minutes later, you go backstage, and you see those two actors. One slaps the other one back. Whoa, your punch tonight was so good. Oh, and I barely missed that kick. Whoa. And you say, what are you guys doing? Slapping each other on the back, laughing. 10 minutes ago, you were fighting on stage, trying to kill each other. What are you fighting on stage? We were just going through a choreographed fight scene. We were acting. That is hishtadlus. When I go into the marketplace, someone looking at me should see a focused individual. I study the opportunities. I see what's out there, and I go out there with energy, with vim, with vigor, all the while knowing that exactly that which Hashem determined shall be, will be. But you see, that's proper hishtadlus. I have to go in the ways of the world. I have to use the world in the ways of the world, knowing that exactly that which Hashem decreed will be. And what that means in plain, simple language is to stay healthy. We eat right, we exercise, to earn a living, I get a job. When it's time to get married, I go out there to find the right one. And if a person says, listen, it's up to Hashem, Hashem runs the world, shidduchim and money, I accept Hashem's decree, I'm doing nothing. I'm going to sit in the base medrash and do nothing. I'd like to share with you, he's not going to succeed. If you'd like to understand this more clearly, imagine Yom Kippur. And imagine I'm sitting there in Yom Kippur, talis over my head, shuckling away, and suddenly I hear a bas kol, a heavenly voice. Shafar. Yeah, what? I was sent from Hashem. Yeah, what? I was sent to tell you this year you'll earn $10 million. Whoa, $10 million. This is great. I leave shul happy as a lark. I heard the bas kol. I quit my day job and don't even look at the stocks or anything. I know what's going to be. I just wait for the 10 million to come rolling in. What do you think is going to happen? Well, I'd like to share with you that most likely what's going to happen is I'm going to go hungry that year. Because when Hashem decrees how much money you are to make that year, there's a caveat, provided you do your part. And your part is to use the world in the ways of the world to earn a living. You go out there and earn a living. If you decide, a little too difficult for me, I'm not participating in this, all bets are off, and most likely you're going to be very, very hungry that year. And if you decide, listen, this going out, this shidduchim and the date, I've been going out, I had it. Hashem, you want me to get married? Bring it to me. I'm waiting. You bring it to me. I'd like to share with you, most likely you're not going to get married. But share it 40 days before a person's born, the bas kol comes out, the daughter of so-and-so to so-and-so. Hashem does not handcuff a person to any decree. The bas kol that comes out says this is appropriate. This is what should be. This year you should earn this amount of money, but you have to go out and do your part. This is the person you should marry. Now go out there and find her. But if you decide, I'm taking it easy, I'm leaving Hashem to do my part and his part as well, all bets are off, and most likely it's not going to end very well. And this is the concept I have to understand. My job is to use the world in the ways of the world, to be very active, very engaged, all the while knowing that I'm going through the motions. Like that choreographed fight scene, I'm throwing the punch, but I know I'm not the determinant of who wins. And not just that, I'm really just going through the motions. I have to throw that punch like it's real, and I have to know that exactly that which Hashem determined is going to be, is going to be. And I have one more step. What happens when you succeed? You open a business and you make money, hands over fists. That is the greatest nisayon. You see, it's very easy when you're poor to trust in Hashem. Listen, I'm desperate. And in desperate straits, Hashem, please help me. And I recognize my parnassah is from Hashem. But when you start making money, and more money, and more money, and success suddenly starts pouring in, it becomes very, very easy to say the words, Yirtzeh Hashem, Baruch Hashem, but it becomes very, very difficult to feel it. And if you'd like to understand what our relationship to a successful business, or successful life, or successful shidduch, or anything should be, it really is quite simple. Imagine a farmer who plants the field. He spent all of spring clearing out all of last year's junk. He made sure to winnow, he made sure that everything was proper. He made sure the furrows were properly, the soil was overturned. And he slowly made sure the field was ready. He then planted, and he made sure to clean out the weeds. And after months and months, finally the summer comes, and he sees a bumper crop, beautiful crop. The farmer understands that is the Yad Hashem. The farmer doesn't control the rains, doesn't control the pestilence, doesn't control whether the earth will be fertile and his crop will be successful or not. His job is to put the seed in and know that Hashem runs the world. Mitzvah Hashem, the rains will come at the right time. Mitzvah Hashem, blights won't happen, pestilence. And as he watches that corn grow, he knows that that's Hashem. That's how we have to proceed with every endeavor in life. I have to go out there, plant my seeds, go out there, use the world in the ways of the world, knowing all the while that it's Hashem's world. Hashem determines what's going to be. Hashem controls everything, and Hashem nurtures it as it's happening. And I believe that's exactly the answer to Moshe Rabbeinu. Hashem wanted the Mishkan to be built by man, including the Menorah. The problem was no human being could possibly comprehend it. It was too complex. Even Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't understand it. But Hashem wanted man to do it. So Hashem said to Moshe, harness this force, use the fire. But it has to be man's creation. When Moshe Rabbeinu had an image of what the menorah was supposed to look like, when he saw it and he used the fire, it was considered that he built it. If he didn't have an image, if he didn't know what he was doing, it would have been nothing. For certain Dvar mitzvahs, you're allowed to just have an image. You put your clump of gold in the fire, and that's considered you use the force of nature. When a couple decide to have a child, they don't know much about biochemistry. They don't know how to weave the 100 billion neurons of the brain. They decide to have a child, and the child comes out. They are the father and the mother of that child. They use the system that Hashem created. They turn the switch, and then everything happens. Moshe Rabbeinu took the clump of gold, put it into fire, but he had to have an image. He had to know what he was doing. Then it was considered that he used the force. He harnessed the force. Then it was considered man's action. And I believe that this Rashi underscores all of our hishtadlus. And this is the most difficult job we have. It's very easy to sit in the Beis Medrash and say Hashem will take care of. And it's also very easy to work 16 hours a day. But it's finding that correct balance where I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, using the world in the ways of the world, knowing that Hashem decrees what's going to be. That is the very difficult balance. In a previous Shmuz on a Parsha, I mentioned an example of what I consider folly. Imagine you meet Moshe, a very successful balabas. Beautiful house in Flatbush, big balstoka, here gives lots of money, wonderful. And you get to go with him in the morning. Shows up to the Daf Yomi with a Starbucks coffee, does the daf, and davens, half like a mensch even. And as he's folding up his talis and his tefillin, he says the words, okay, that was for Hashem, and now this is for me. And he goes off to work. Sounds like a pretty good balabas, right? And that was for Hashem. He learned, he davened. Now he takes care of his family. That was for Hashem, and this is for me. Okay. Now, I used to say he's half an apikoros, because Hashem doesn't just live in the Beis Medrash. Hashem lives in the marketplace as well. As a matter of fact, Hashem keeps the entire planet and everything in existence. And if you believe that Hashem operates in one realm, not another, you're at least half an apikoros. But it's really much worse than that. I'll share with you a very interesting understanding. Let's assume I decide, God, you're good at a lot of stuff, but when it comes to earning a living, I gotta take over. And I put in a little bit too much hishtadlus. And I decide I'm going to pursue this and pursue that, and maybe even a little shifty, maybe even a little bit, maybe even lying, stealing, and cheating. Because listen, earning a living is an important thing. How much money am I going to make? If you like to understand how much money you're going to make exactly the amount of money you were supposed to make. But it's not just that you're going to make the exact amount of money you're supposed to make. You're going to have wasted your 9 to 5. You see, Hashem does not need you to work for a living. Hashem's got lots and lots of money. And Hashem can make food grow on trees, including prime rib steak. But Hashem gave you the opportunity to use this world in the ways of the world. If you do that, and you do it properly, you're considered a person who's serving Hashem. And we're supposed to serve Hashem not a few hours a day. We're totally 24/7, 365 of the Hashem. And that means in the base marriage, in the workplace, throughout my life, I'm doing this because this is what my Creator wants me to do. My Creator wants me to earn a living. I go out there into the marketplace. But when I'm doing that, I'm serving Hashem. And that is a mitzvah, and it's proper, and I'm credited with all the results, provided I do it in the right way, in the right time, in the right manner. And what that means is if I'm earning a living because that's what Hashem wants me to do, and I'm supporting my children learning, and I'm supporting my family, that's a holy endeavor, and I'm given tremendous schar, and what I accomplish is incredible. But if I decide I'm taking over the reins here, listen, God, you're good at some things, but comes to earning a living, I gotta, this is serious stuff over here. It's not just that I'm not going to earn a penny more, I'm wasting my 9 to 5. The whole reason why Hashem wants me to do that, the reason why Hashem wants me to be engaged in the world is for me to grow, for me to accomplish, for that to be credited to me. And if in fact I blow it and I serve me, what I'm doing is wasting my time because I'm not going to earn a penny more, and worse than that, I've wasted my 9 to 5. And this is the most incredible part about it. If I trust in Hashem and I use the world the way Hashem wants to, it's holy, it's proper, and everything that results from that is credited back to me. And if I'm serving me when I'm doing it, that's what I'm credited with, serving me. The money would have come anyway, and all of those wise people who think that, come on, this is serious, I got to earn a living, and they're going to lie and steal and cheat. You just have to ask yourself one simple question. When Hashem decrees how much money you're going to make, was that before taxes or after taxes? Listen, come on. You can't expect me to pay federal, state, and city tax. Come on, that's ridiculous, right? As in, like Hashem says, listen, I was going to give you $1 million this year, but come on, you're going to pay both federal and state, and you're going to be honest, forget it, all bets are off, forget it. I don't believe that's the way Hashem operates. When Hashem decrees how much money you're going to make, that means after taxes, assuming you're honest, assuming you're doing what you're supposed to do, and if you try to lie, steal, and cheat, guess what? You're not going to make a penny more. But more than that, you blew the whole reason why Hashem needs you to do that. Hashem wants you to do that. I have a mushal that I used once before, but it bears repeating. Imagine you have a fellow who has a kid, Nebuch, who has social integration issues. His son doesn't get the normal social norms, so he sends him to special social skills class, and one of the instructions is that the father should work with the child and other children to get the child used to normal social interactions. So the father takes his job seriously, takes off from work, invites a few boys over, and together with his son Moshe and 3 other boys, 3 other 6-year-olds are sitting on the floor playing Monopoly. And the father guides the game, and at a certain point, the doorbell rings, and the father can't help but notice that Moshe reaches into the bank and pulls out a few $500 bills. The other boys just turn, they don't notice it. And then later on, the phone rings, and again, the father notices that Moshe reaches into the bank and pulls out a few more 500s. And this happened the 3rd time, and finally the father calls Moshe to the kitchen and says, Moshe, I couldn't help but notice that by mistake, some of the money from the bank ended up in your pocket. And Moshe says, yes, Tati. I heard you and Mommy talking last night that you need money. Here, Tati, it's for you. And he gives his father the money. The father doesn't need the Monopoly money. The father's taking off time from work to teach his son how to be a mensch. And when you understand that Hashem doesn't need help running the world, And Hashem doesn't need you to earn a living. Hashem gave you the opportunity to use the world in the ways of the world. And if you do that, it's proper, it's holy, it's a mitzvah. And if not, you're not going to make a penny more. But more than that, you wasted your time. You wasted your time and you spent your time doing nothing. However, this very, very delicate balance of using the world and the ways of the world, all the while knowing that Hashem determines exactly what's going to be, is a very difficult balance to reach. And on a practical level, how do I know? How do I know how many hours I should work? How do I know how hard I should try? I went out with this person, that person. Do I send my resume all over the place? How do you know what the right hishtadlus is? And I have a mushal that I think defines the right hishtadlus. If you want to find how much effort you should put in, how much to trust Hashem, I have a simple mushal. If you go to the circus, you'll note there's the high wire act. There's a very high wire, about 150 feet off the ground, this steel wire. And the acrobat is on the wire, walking, doing flips, doing everything. It's a very, very entertaining, but also a little bit frightening act because the man is way up there. But if you've ever watched carefully, you'll notice the acrobat is not afraid. Part of the reason is because he's well trained. Part of the reason is because there's a safety net under him. And if in fact he misses, and if in fact he slips, he falls to the safety net, everything is fine and well. In any case, when Barnum and Bailey Circus was still in existence, and it had been for almost a century, I believe it was, in the 1920s, when the High Wire Act was first introduced, it became quite a sensation, and it was very popular. And one day, the acrobat decided he was going to add a little bit of a twist to the drama. Instead of the safety net, he decided there'd be no safety net. He's going to walk out 150 feet above the concrete, no net to catch him. And I can't describe the electricity in the air. Everyone knew that if one slip, he falls to his death. Now, the acrobat had done this hundreds, maybe thousands of times before, but this time it was different because he knew that one little casual slip and he's dead. That is a perfect mashal for hishtadlus. When you go out there into the world, you have to imagine there's no safety net. I have to be mishtadel, I have to put in my effort as if there's no one else but me. My actions will determine exactly what will be. And all the while, I have to know there is a safety net. I have to go out there, someone looking at me sees a person focused, diligent, studying the marketplace, studying the opportunities, and seizing the moment. And all the while I'm going out there with that drive, I have to know there's a safety net. Hashem determined what's going to be. I'm walking on that tight wire as if there's no safety net, all the while knowing that there is, and that's why it's such a difficult balance. Because I have to use the world in the ways of the world. My hishtadlus has to be very, very serious, very diligent, very focused. And if I'm lazy about it, you don't do a proper hishtadlus. And that alone might well be the reason why you're not going to get what you're supposed to get. Because again, if I say I'm not putting in an effort this year, it doesn't matter what Hashem determined should be the previous Rosh Hashanah. That should be was based on a caveat, provided I do what I'm supposed to do, namely use the world in the ways of the world. If you'd like to know what kind of effort to put in, ask a financial analyst. Based on your family size, based on your skill set, based on the marketplace, what should be the normal derech hateva, ways of nature approach to your earning a living? And all the while you have to know that Hashem determines exactly what's going to be. However, there's one more step to this. What happens? What happens if I own a successful electronics store and I'm doing beautifully, expanding and expanding, and one day my CFO comes into me and says, boss, I'll tell you something. You've had this policy that we're never open on Saturday, and I respect you for a man of religion, I respect it, but the competition's getting fierce, and online sales are grabbing market share from us every day. Boss, I looked at it, and it comes out, if we don't stay open on Saturday, we're out of business, we're finished, we're tanked, it's over. Well, wait a minute, I have to go b'derech hateva. You told me I have to go in the ways of nature. And derech hateva says I got to keep my place open on Shabbos, so I got to do it, right? Well, here's a little problem. When I'm using the world in the ways of the world, it's because my Creator asked me and wants me to do it that way. But my Creator also says, 6 days a week you shall work, and not on the seventh. So I can't open my business on Shabbos saying, I'm using the world in the ways of the world as my Creator wants me to, when Hashem clearly said, Sheish Yamim Tavod, Vasisa Kom Lachtecha, and not the seventh day. And you see, that's the bracketing factor. I have to go in the ways of the world according to the Torah's approach. Meaning my derech hateva, using the world in the ways of the world, has to be bracketed by a Torah approach to life. And what that means in plain language is we work 6 days and we don't work a seventh day. You have to leave enough time to learn, to daven. You have to be a father. You have to be a husband. You have to have enough time to do the things you have to do. And if you find yourself in a situation where you can't, you have no right to say, well, listen, derech hateva demands my doing it. So what am I going to do? And I'd like to share with you, this actually presents quite an interesting challenge. On a regular basis, people ask me about parnassah, what should I do? And a lot of times young people, and I'm a little bit challenged. Because imagine a 22-year-old comes to you, fellow doing very well in yeshiva, learning, and his plan is to get married, learn a few years of kollel, and then he's going to go off into the workplace. Okay, here's the problem. The cost of living in New York City and surrounding areas is quite high. Let's do the math. If you have a large family, let's say 5 kids, 8, whatever the number is, you're going to figure to pay about $100,000 in tuition. You're going to have to buy a house. The house is going to cost well upwards of $600,000, meaning your mortgage and property tax payments are going to be at least $50,000. You have camp, you have clothing, you have kosher food. Before you turn around, $250,000 is minimal that you're going to have to spend for your family's expenses. Forget earn, spend. Now here's the problem. What percentage of the U.S. population makes $250,000? So Census Bureau published, it was back in 2005, that the household income, meaning combined husband and wife together, the 250,000 mark, only the top 1.5% of all U.S. households earn over $250,000. Now here's the problem. There are a lot of smart Jewish boys, and a lot of boys are going to go out there in business and make a fortune. I get that. But how could you expect the average, everyone, to be able to make $250,000 plus when only the top tier, the 1.5% of all U.S. households make that much money? So obviously you can't get married, can't have kids, or have one kid maximum. It's like China, one kid and that's it, one boy and you're done, right? Well, I don't think so, because that's not exactly the Torah's approach. And that's exactly where this Rashi comes into play. I have to go b'derech hateva. I have to have an image. I have to have a plan. But I also have to be prepared, like Moshe Rabbeinu, to take my clump of gold and throw it in the fire. That means Hashem wants me to get married. Hashem wants me to have kids, and not one kid and not 2. I'm supposed to have as many children that I could bring up to be healthy, happy, well-adjusted children. And money is not supposed to be an object there. Now, don't make a mistake here. I'm a big proponent of moving out of town. I'm a huge proponent of moving out of town because I find when you're in a small out-of-town community, there's connections, there's involvement, your children are different, your family is different, and wherever I can, I recommend for people to leave town. And leave town doesn't mean go to Baltimore, because even though Baltimore certainly is much different than New York City area, it's still a large Jewish population. So if you're able to leave town, you could live for a lot less than that. But the simple reality is that if you're going to be living anywhere in the New York, New Jersey area, the amount of money you're going to have to earn is probably not something attainable b'derech hateva. Because how many jobs do you know that pay $250,000, $300,000? Interestingly enough, you're supposed to get married, supposed to have kids, supposed to do your best, supposed to find the best opportunity you can, and you have to throw your clump of gold into the fire and know that Hashem runs the world. But that's not derech hateva. It sure is, because that's the Torah's approach. And my job is to serve my Creator as my Creator wants me to serve Him. And that means I have to use as much as I can. I have to use the ways of nature. But at a certain point, I can't do any more. But Hashem wants me to do more. And Hashem wants me to go down this path. As everything in life, it's very important to be shol eitzah. It's very important to ask advice before you do any life move. And you have to have das Torah, and you have to have... But this understanding, my job is to use the world in the ways of the world, all the while knowing that exactly what's going to be Hashem determines. And more than that, knowing that there'll be many times when I'm going to use the world in the ways of the world, and there isn't a clear vision. I have an approximation. But I have to go out there, trust in Hashem, and know that that's what Hashem wants me to do. I have to go out there and use the world in the ways of the world and fully trust that Hashem knows what He's doing. As I can't keep my place open on Shabbos, as I have to spend time with my family, learning, davening, I also have to be able to do exactly what Hashem wants. And that often means doing things that sound beyond our capacity. I believe this Chazal shares with us a tremendous, tremendous concept. Moshe Rabbeinu could not understand the Menorah. He had to use the system of the fire. But for him to be the creator of the Menorah, he had to have an image. And Hashem showed him the image in the Har. Only when he had the image, then it would be considered that he used it. When you use the world in the ways of the world, everything that comes about is credited to you, provided that you did that to serve Hashem. If you do it to serve you, you served you. If you did it because it's a mitzvah and that's what Hashem wants you to do, you served your Creator, and everything that comes about is credited to you, and it's part of your avodas Hashem. We have to understand that Hashem runs the world. Everything under the sun, everything in the upper world, everything that exists is kept in existence, maintained by Hashem, and anything that happens only happens through Hashem. And I have to understand, no human being can harm me. You can scheme, you can dream. I walk around with that lucite bubble. And as no human being can harm me, no human being can help me. You could have all the money in North America. If I'm not supposed to have it, I won't get it. And more than that, it goes so far that you can't insult me, you can't embarrass me. And I have to know that and firmly understand that. The Sefer Chinuch explains, lo sikam, don't take revenge. But you know what he says by lo sikam? He says, don't take revenge, not because it'll ruin your midos, not because you're going to cause fights. He says it's much more basic than that. Don't take revenge because you're imputing to man power that he doesn't have. If I take revenge against something you did, you harmed me, you hurt me, I'm going to get you back. But that's foolish. I have to know and recognize no human being can harm me. If I wasn't supposed to suffer that embarrassment, you wouldn't have been able to do it. And if I was supposed to suffer, it would have come to me some other way. That's the loudspeaker. I have to recognize that there's someone speaking. When you insult me, I have to recognize those words are from Hashem. I'm supposed to turn my eyes heavenward. I'm supposed to say the words, thank you, Hashem, for revealing a few of my many flaws. I'm supposed to understand those words came through you. I didn't ask you to be the nudnik, but nevertheless, you did not cause me that. And that understanding that Hashem is involved in everything in creation is the underpinnings of our amunah, of our bitachon system. And at the same time, Hashem told Noach, build a teva exactly the size. Why? Because you have to go into the derech teva. You can't build a teva big enough to house all of the animals in creation, but you can't just do nothing. Yeshua told the Jewish people, guard yourselves, get ready, put on your armor, sharpen your swords. Even though he knew it was going to be b'derech nes, because again, as Rabbi Chai teaches us, that is the operating principle. Shmuel didn't go out. He said to Hashem, I can't go. Shaul's going to hear and kill me. Hashem said, you're right, here, do this. Because even a Navi Hashem, given a directive by Hashem himself, can't put himself in Makom Sakana in a dangerous situation. We have to go b'derech teva in the ways of nature, all the while knowing that exactly that what's going to happen has been decreed by Hashem. And that's a choreographed fight scene. I have to go through the motions. I'm throwing that punch, and it looks so real. And I have to know that I'm just going through the motions, walking on that tightrope. I have to know that I have to imagine Hashem's not involved in the picture. I have to use the world in the ways of the world. Imagine when I'm going out there, there's no safety net. And yet I know there's a safety net. And finally, everything is bracketed by the Torah. Meaning to say, I'm doing this because my Creator wants me to do it, and I'm doing it in the way that my Creator wants me to do it. And many times that means throwing my clump of gold into the fire, because I know I can't do this. I can't not have a plan. I have to have a vision. I have to have an image. But it could be that that image and that vision isn't totally al pi derech hateva. But if it's clear and obvious that Hashem wants me to do this, that's what I do. I step forward, take my kikar zahav, I throw it into the fire, knowing that Hashem will determine exactly what's going to be.